to First Flight Society. Good morning.
Good morning.
On behalf of the Wright brothers family, along with my brothers John and Paul, I welcome you to this celebration of the 112th anniversary of the Wright brothers' first flight here in Kitty Hawk. My name is Duncan Jameson. That's Jameson spelled like the whiskey. No relation though. During our visit last year, someone commented to me, "Your family reunions must have been interesting." I think just like the Wright brothers' own family, our family was pretty normal, if there is such a thing as a normal family. But I would like to share some of the remembrances that are unique, and maybe not so unique, that our family experienced, which I like to call growing up right. I first learned that we were related to the Wright brothers when I was 8 years old, and I told my mother, Barbara Jameson, that we were studying the Wright brothers in 3rd grade. She told me that Wilbur and Orville were my great-great-uncles. Orville became my favorite Wright brother because he had a mustache. I remember my grandfather, John Jameson, his home office with a big roll-top desk that had a lot of Wright brothers memorabilia. I was particularly fond of a cartoon of the modest Wilbur being celebrated by the royalty of Europe. Wilbur was a rock star. That print is now hanging in my office at home. My sister Leontine remembers seeing a propeller from one of the early Wright flyers in our grandparents' closet. When she asked my grandmother, Leontine Wright, about it, she said, "Oh, that old thing." So for my 5th grade science fair, I decided to make a miniature model of the 1903 Wright flyer. Well, actually, my father, John Jameson, did most of the work, and he made a meticulous reproduction of the airplane out of balsa wood and toothpicks. I think he used a Lego block to recreate Charlie Taylor's motor. My exhibit also included a plaque with pieces of wood and cloth from the very first Kitty Hawk plane, and a typed letter from Orville with his own handwriting, where he scratched out some of the typewriters, and it had his signature authenticating those pieces. The first family reunion I remember was the 50th wedding anniversary of my grandmother's sister, Ivanette Wright, and Harold Miller. That's where I first met Amanda and Steve Wright and Mary Ann Hudak, who was Ivanette's daughter, who passed away earlier this year. She was the last remaining descendant of the Wright brothers from the generation ahead of me, and she is the last living relative to have ever met Orville. I recently saw a film of her as a young girl sitting on Orville's lap with my father's sister, Aunt Lonnie, standing next to him. Ivanette and Uncle Scribs would later celebrate their 60th and 70th wedding anniversaries. My senior year in high school, I had to draw a family tree for my sociology class. You can imagine my teacher's surprise when I had a branch extending from me to my father, John Jameson, to his mother, Leontine Wright Jameson, to her father, Lauren Wright, brother of Wilbur and Orville. In 1998, 3 generations of Wright descendants came here to Kitty Hawk for the rededication of the Wright Brothers Memorial. We attended a dinner with Buzz Aldrin, and George Bush 41 gave a speech where he said, "Read my lips, no more parachute jumps." He had just parachuted out of a plane at the age of 75. He broke that promise too when he parachuted again 15 years later at age 90. 2003, of course, was a big year of the celebration of the 100th anniversary of the first flight here at Kitty Hawk. In Dayton, Paul's family and mine attended a black-tie gala featuring Harrison Ford. We also toured Hawthorne Hill, the house that Orville built after the success of the Wright brothers' invention, and where my father lived briefly, helping to put together the memoirs of the Wright brothers. The tour guide mentioned that Ivanette was Orville's favorite niece. I did have to correct her by saying, "I'm sorry, I thought Leontine was his favorite niece." Our families were also part of the ceremony at the Wright family gravesite. We sat and talked with John Glenn and Neil Armstrong, and then stood with them at the gravesite around the graves while hundreds looked on. In his speech, John Glenn announced that this was the 34th anniversary of Neil Armstrong walking on the moon. The crowd erupted in long applause for the always humble Neil Armstrong, another true American hero. Over 50 of the Wright descendants got together again for the 100th anniversary celebration right here in Kitty Hawk. George W. Bush was among the featured speakers. The highlight of that grand event was a press conference held by the Jameson siblings. We had pieces of the first airplane that went to the moon and back, and a signed letter from Neil Armstrong authenticating those pieces. We handed them to Neil, who presented them to the park ranger, and now you can see those pieces on display right here at the Visitors Center. Just this October, my brother, John Jameson III, and I visited Dayton, Ohio, and were treated to a magnificent tour by Stephen and Amanda Wright of the Wright Brothers historical sites, including the Wright Brothers Factory, the Carillon Historical Park, where we saw the camera that John T. Daniels used to take that iconic photo of that first flight of the 1903 flyer. We even got to be passengers on a look-alike of the Wright B flyer, feeling what the Wright brothers must have experienced going up in an open-air airplane. The highlight of our trip was the archives at Wright State University. I saw many photos of my family, Lauren Wright pulling his children on a sled, Orville yucking it up with my great-grandfather Lauren on a fishing trip, Wilbur on a tour of Europe, a home movie of the Wright family celebrating Christmas, and a family portrait of my father, my aunt, and my grandfather and grandfather. Also on display was that propeller that my grandmother had in that closet. Most touching was the journal of my great-great-grandfather, Milton Wright, father of Wilbur Norval, where I saw his handwritten entries of the proud day his sons successfully completed the first flights, and on May 30th, 1912, where father wrote about the tragic passing of his son, Wilbur. One of the archivists said to me, "How does it feel to have your family archived like this?" You know, it feels all right. Thank you.